Hey everybody, welcome to a brand new Film Music Media conversation. I'm here with composer Jake Monaco. Jake, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I've been starting off my interviews recently with this question, and you can take it at face value. You can find deeper meaning. You can get philosophical. But I'm curious, as as a person, as a storyteller, as a musician, as a composer, what does music mean to you?
It's the guiding light. I mean,
Yeah,
when we're watching something, it inspires emotion and kind of guides us along in every situation in everyday life. You're going to find some sort of music that can support, what you're going through at the moment, what kind of emotions you're dealing with, and it's kind of everything.
yeah. So yeah,
every
so I
every
mean,
culture. Yeah.
yeah, so that's an awesome answer. I love it. So it's everything, but take me back to when it wasn't in your life. When did it? I guess going back to childhood, or I'm curious, when did you find it? When did you get interested in it? And when did it go from hobby and interest to this is going to be my career?
I remember I started my parents started me playing guitar when I was like 6 years old.
Yeah,
And I remember my mom used to sing with this other woman who was playing who ended up being my guitar teacher. And so I took it for like a year, but I hated practicing. It was awful and didn't want to read music and didn't wanted nothing to do with it. So eventually, like after a year or two, that was off to the side at that point. But then come high school, we had just moved to a new place, brand new school, didn't know anybody there, so kind of held up in my place and started playing guitar again and watching videos on MTV and VH1 when they played videos still. And being able to like see artists, with especially on live shows and things like that, and
yeah,
how they were doing their thing, and learning how to play mainly by watching. Um, and then that kind of got into like the singer songwriter type thing. Went to college, started a band, did some college tours a little bit on like some spring breaks and things like
did you
that.
study? Were you studying music in college or no?
Yeah, I started
Yeah,
studying composition, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do
right.
at that point. So it wasn't until a little bit after I graduated, I still stuck around the area working in their music tech lab because I that's where gravitated towards a little bit more.
Yeah,
Uh, was doing like engineering and Pro Tools for my a cappella group that I was in, and
nice. That's awesome.
recording for a couple other bands that were on campus and things like that. So it was fun to kind of jump into the tech side of everything. So I started. I was still working there after I graduated, and eventually needed to be doing something else. So through a
Yeah,
conversation with my mentor from the University of Richmond, he's like, "You should go check out this USC program." Like, okay. So I flew out here and went to one of their scoring sessions, and I was just floored. I was like, "Wait, you can go to college and do this? Like, this is a thing?" So
yeah.
yeah, that's where it came from, and now here we are, 17 years later, I think.
Wow, that's amazing.
Crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Like when you look back at it, it's just like you kind of remember the starting point and kind of where you are now. But like when I look back at like, okay, I got interested in film at 9. I went to film school, and it's like, but then it's like, vroom, and it's like here somehow that we just arrived here. It's just
Yeah.
like what? Like, so what were like? I guess how did you get your foot in the door? How did you start kind of trying to find work and trying to make this like, okay, I can hopefully like sustain myself. This is my career. I can pay for my bills. I can pay for life and just do this, as a living. Was it like a gradual process? Was it just like a lucky thing that happened? I'm curious what was kind of the catalyst that kind of opened the thing to open, like blasted everything wide open.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I honestly, even towards the end of USC, I mean, they did a great job exposing you to a lot of like real world stuff. But
Yeah.
just given my personal music background, I didn't necessarily feel like solid enough to really be going out and doing my own thing. So, they kind of talk about, oh, well, you can go with this path or you can go
Right.
the assistant intern path. And so I figured that was probably the more ideal path for me, is just to get a little bit more real world experience before I kind of, try and start something on my own. So I was super fortunate, and like a week or two before graduation, I met with Christoph Beck and ended
Yeah.
up getting hired by him to be his assistant. And I think I was with him almost 7.5, 8 years,
Wow.
going from kind of menial tasks to us being able to co-compose some stuff together.
Yeah.
And it was I mean, he's still, you know, a really, really great friend, and
He's a
he's
great,
being
I mean, he's
honored
awesome.
at
I
the
love
end.
Christoph. He's like such a
Yeah.
cool guy, so nice, so humble, like never like doesn't have any like yeah, ego over him. Like yeah.
No, he's really great. I'm so glad that he and I are still friends, and you know, we stay in touch a lot. So that was a great experience, and I learned a whole heck of a lot more. So and then it was like 2014, I think. I ended
Yeah.
up getting 2 animated TV shows at the same time, and we had already been kind of talking about my kind of departing. My son was born in early 2014, and so I'd already set up a rig at home to kind of mirror what they had at the studio. So I was still working a little
Yeah.
bit with them, but at that point, it was kind of time.
Yeah,
And
I know.
yeah,
So when you look back at those days, where were like, are there anything that you still kind of keep, like any practices or techniques that you learned while working with Christoph, and like maybe is it just, or was it just more kind of seeing, like getting a sense of the business side and seeing how you handle meetings and talk to directors and producers and the studios and stuff like that, or was it like do you pick up also, I guess, like aesthetic or a technical approach from him and then just composing as well?
totally. I mean, he has a very, or at least I think in most of his music, he has a very like song approach, just in the way that there's a melody and there are proper B sections, and you don't truncate things. You know, it's
Yeah,
more about extending things, and every note should be going somewhere. There's, you know, I remember writing a lot for him, and this is meandering. You know, we gotta figure out what is it doing here. So I think a
yeah,
lot of that was really, really helpful, just in terms of, you know, how to guide the music in the right way. And there were a lot of technical things that, you know, I picked up along the way, and you know, technical tricks, and you know,
yeah.
him being able to use, you know, multiple programs at the same time between Cubase and Ableton Live, and you know, this just, it opens up a lot of other doors, and I kind of took a lot of those things and carried them with me in my own career.
Yeah. So when you started, like, I guess when you started writing your own shows and your own projects, I'm curious, like when you're younger and you're kind of getting into it, like, are you thinking about like what my sound is, what my like style is, like, or did you have that formed yet, or not even thinking about it? Or you're just going with instinct, and people go like, oh, that's Jake's style, that's like kind of his thing, or are you like conscious about it, like I want to be like this or that or this kind of style? I'm curious, like, how did you like form your sound, I guess?
It's funny, like I've never thought about it really in terms of, this is my sound, like I need to
Yeah.
always stay this, you know, my signature whatever. I mean, I couldn't even really tell you what that is specifically. I mean, some people have told me it's like, you know, it sounds very much like you.
Yeah.
I don't really know what that is.
See,
So no,
but that's
not a
interesting. I
conscious
love
thing.
that. Yeah, I was like, but I think that's what, because I love, like, I mean, I love auteur like storytellers and kind of like embracing people's, like, you feel the personality in the music, and I think that's what attracts a lot of people to film scores, because like John Williams sounds like John Williams, Hans Zimmer sounds
Yeah.
like Hans Zimmer, but I mean, Jake Monaco sounds like Jake Monaco, and I think that's very interesting. So you never really like analyzed yourself or like look back and go, well, what am I doing, kind of thing.
It's
Like,
true. It's true. You know, it's funny. My current assistant, Jose, who, and he's been with me for like 4 years now, and a really, really great friend. I remember a couple of years ago, he's like, "Oh, that's a good one. I'm going to put that in the Monaco handbook or something like that." He was actually keeping like a little page of little things that I do every, like a lot, my
yeah,
common devices or whatever. I was like, "Wait a second, seriously?" And I actually read down it, and I was like, "I do that a lot. It's
yeah,
true. Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, that's so funny. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it just developed naturally. That's awesome. But
yeah, so
so, but
funny."
I guess when you first get started, I think a lot of younger composers maybe entering the business, or anybody, I mean, if you're working in editing or costume design or directing, whatever, like, did you ever have trouble, I guess, kind of finding confidence to just be like, I guess just finding confidence? Like, do you ever have to overcome like self-doubt and like imposter syndrome or anything like this? Because I think once you get in it and you start working, and I'm sure it always stays with you, but I'm curious, like, if you ever or were you always confident, you just always felt like comfortable in presenting, and then rejection and all that stuff, like kind of what every composer goes through.
I am I am very comfortable in rejection. I deal with self-doubt every single day, which is why I'm
Yeah.
so comfortable with the rejection. but but I, you know, in this business,
Yeah.
you have to be comfortable enough to like take notes and adjust, even
Yeah.
though, you know, you might think, "What? This is perfect."
Yeah.
Um, you know, but maybe it's not, and so that's okay. But yeah, I mean, you know, we've done the things where the virgins go into the double digits and above, and and sometimes it's just more about figuring out what needs to get done, and nobody really knows what it is, but they know what it's not. And you just got to
Yeah.
filter through some of those things before, you end up landing where you eventually do. So, I mean, there have been several projects where it has been like banging my head against the wall for the
Mm.
majority of it. And then all of a sudden something clicks, halfway through the project, and then everything else is like, a breeze.
Yeah.
So I think for a lot of things, it's unlocking whatever that first thing is. And then, things kind of organically evolve from that.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, let's talk about, I want to talk about your general approach. Like, I know it's going to be specific, or yeah, I'm sorry, different for every project. It can be different for a TV show or movie, or depending on what the format is. But I'm curious, like where the first note comes from for you. What's typically like where you gravitate towards for that kind of first little inspiration, whether it's like waiting for the locked picture, having a conversation with your director, or if you're lucky enough to be on early enough to read the script. Is that some composers like to do that, some people like to not read it. I'm curious, like if you had, I guess, your choice, like where would you gravitate towards to kind of just like pull that first note out?
I love being able to read a script and
Yeah.
talk to any of the other creatives, and us being able to kind of formulate something, just whether it's conceptually or whether it is more exact. Like, we need to figure out, what the palette's going to be. This is what I want it to sound like. I love these 6 scores, and this is, and then there's these, 12 films that I'm trying to evoke through the process, whatever.
Yeah.
And just figuring out where they're coming from helps substantially, to kind of unlock that process, like we are just talking about. um and I think, you know doing that so early ahead of time is so nice, because then a bunch of temp music doesn't get dumped in, and then some people get attached to it, and then
Yeah.
you're fighting that battle, which is helpful sometimes to establish tone. I'm not knocking it by any means, but I think it's tough when we have to get super close to it. But I do love the overall creative process with developing whatever that new sound might be, for that project. And that's one of the things that I I like to do a lot, is create the unique sonic identity for, whatever that project might be.
Yeah.
So it's fun to be able to go back and forth like that, and experiment, because hopefully
Yeah.
you're going to come up with something new that and fresh, and mess around with whether it's a theme written on piano, or whether it's just creating sounds and things like that to kind of make a toolbox to start from.
So is that is there, do you have like, I guess, a approach that you stick to every time, or does it change? Like, do you usually sit at the piano and just kind of noodle around, or you do that kind of sound palette toolbox first, or is it just depends on the project?
uh I think it really depends on the project. For this Nat Geo show that I'm just finished working on, there was a lot of fill up the toolbox,
Yeah.
and then start to then write some themes, and then pull from the toolbox in order to then kind of stretch some things out, because in order to, in preparation of a lot of things to come and less time to write a lot of minutes of music, I needed the
Yeah.
toolbox to be very full so I could just go and grab. So, sometimes it's me just, breaking out a bunch of different percussion instruments, or doing weird things, getting a tom and like bending it down, and or whatever it might be, or hiring individual musicians. And for this, I wrote down I scribbled on a page, and it was just like a bunch of aleatoric things, like no staff or anything like that. It was just, hit this note and get louder and then go up. And so I got a bunch of stuff back that then I could take, twist, pitch, do whatever needed to be done to,
Yeah.
make it sound a little bit more unique than just a flute or a trombone or something like that.
Right. Well, yeah, let's jump into, I mean, you scored National Geographic's Incredible Animal Journeys, narrated by Jeremy Renner. It's a beautiful nature documentary series on Disney Plus. And I grew up on nature documentaries. Like a lot of my friends grew up watching, X-Men cartoons. It was weird. Like as a child, I watched like it was like Silly Symphony, and like the original Merry Melodies, like where, it was like Tom and Jerry and Chip and Dale before they talked and all that stuff. But it was always about like motion and music, like those early documentaries on Discovery Channel before it turned into like 90 Day Fiance and all that stuff. But like before it turned into trash TV and mermaids and stuff, when it was
Yeah.
actual real nature documentaries, which thankfully Nat Video is still doing. But so I'm curious, what was the I guess the first conversations about music and kind of the palette, I guess, building that toolbox, like what were the conversations about because I think it's unique that it's about migrations and animal journeys, a lot of kind of like point A to point B, and the kind of the struggle, and the challenges that these animals go through versus maybe something different like Planet Earth, where it kind of focuses on an ecosystem or a certain moment or something like this. This, I think, has a structure that you're able to probably, I guess, like kind of read and kind of analyze and kind of approach. So I'm curious, what were the first conversations about?
So they, towards the beginning of the process, they were still trying to figure out exactly how they were going to storytell. But there were
Mm.
two things that kind of came right off the bat. And like you just pointed out, the differentiation between Planet Earth or some of the other BBC series, which are absolutely phenomenally
Oh
gorgeous.
yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
They're amazing. And the two things that they wanted to do different than those, one being the, like you mentioned, just focusing on like an ecosystem or, you know, one absolutely miraculous thing that happens within a species. This is more about like a mother and child, or in the case of, you know, some of these animals, you know, the mother has the egg or, you know, birth, and then the kids on their own. But you're
Yeah.
following these youngsters essentially on their first migrations and seeing what they're going to then have to do year after year after year. And so it became more in a narrative sense where you're doing the storytelling and you're going to be with these characters. So we're character focused as opposed to spectacle focused, I guess, maybe.
Right. Yeah.
And they wanted to differentiate the music as well, just to not necessarily have it sound like, you know, gigantic orchestra. I remember in a very, I think in probably one of the very first demos I did for the main title, I had French horns on the line and it immediately got nixed. And
Oh,
so very quickly found out that horns and brass and anything like that was absolutely out the door, especially used in any sort of traditional sense. So that's where, you know, I started experimenting a little bit more. And initially all orchestra was out the door. Eventually
wow.
strings found their way back in, but they were more so in a supporting role. Some pieces they definitely come in and play more of a centric role, but otherwise it was about finding something unique that could, you know, be our main instrument for each of these animals. I mean, each episode out of the six has three like main characters essentially, and so there's 18 solid themes that have distinct sounds over the course of the series. And I think that was part of the fun and joy. And otherwise, they kind of gave me free reign, which was amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I mean, we were, and I guess how often is I'm curious, like, because I'm sure they go out and shoot tons of footage and then they have to like kind of cull it down and create, you know, something into an episode. So
Yeah.
when do you start working on this? Like, and when is like, it wasn't the first spotting session, and like, how often is the picture changing? Is it kind of like a movie where like picture changes like a lot? Like there's a lot of changes. I'm curious, how do you and then adapt and conform to all that? Like,
Well, it's funny. So when I first started on the project, they're like, "Do you have a team?" And I was like, "No, I'm good. I've got an assistant. I have some other people that I can, you know, that I work with, and you know, like that'll be fine." Okay, because it gets, you know, it might get a little crunchy at the end. Okay,
uh-huh.
that's why we're going to start 14 months before the end. Okay,
Wow.
we're good. So we start and they're starting to edit one episode and just trying to figure out like, you know, how they're telling the stories. And it was a completely different film. I mean, each one of these is really like their own little film in and of
Right. Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
But it was a completely different thing from where it started to then the second episode started in like October of last year. By January, like everything was different. There were like little bits and pieces of other episodes that were kind of trickling in. Their schedule continued to push, and all of a sudden it was, you know, now the six episodes are all mixing like 2 to 3 weeks apart from each other, and it's 45 minutes of music, and their picture lock is only coming a few weeks before their actual mix. And so it was insane. But the great part is that I got to experiment and play with this stuff for so long that by the
Yeah.
time it did get to picture lock, um, number one, the studio, Nat Geo, Disney, everybody had already seen like at least half the episode was original music. So there was no surprises really for them when they first started to review the stuff, which was great. Because a lot of the time they're only seeing temp until the last, you know, couple of rounds or whatever, and then, you know, they'll start to give notes on music. But we kind of got to be along with it the entire way. Um, but yeah, it was a little
Yeah.
hectic towards the end, but the toolbox was all there, so we got to like pull everything from it. So I don't think any of the, you know, originality or creativity had to be sacrificed
Yeah.
due to the fact it needed to be very quick turnarounds.
And how do you, I guess, how do you deal with, I guess, pacing and pacing an episode, because I mean, there's once the edit comes together, you're telling a journey, you have characters, you know, we were following animals through kind of their journey, and I'm sure there's going to be kind of moments of more excitement, kind of lulls, and kind of, and then how do you, I guess, make space for the narration as well? I'm sure there's probably scratch narration when you're working on it, because I've
Yep.
learned that even David, when I was interviewing Adam and James who work on Frozen Planet, they're like, oh yeah, we don't hear the David Attenborough stuff until like the or the it's all after we've done, like, you know.
It's true. It's crazy that actually the temp narration that they had in there is essentially the same thing in the same place as when Renner's voice got dropped in. So
Wow.
much so that, you know, because a lot of what we did was we sculpted around some of the narration. And, you know, even though the action visually might kick in, and then the narration on top of it is talking about what's going to happen, but like the tension and everything is building behind the narration. Then
Right.
the music has to release and give it the pace, which if you were just looking at it visually, you might have started the pace and the intensity much earlier. But because we shaped it along, you know, with the narration and everything, that luckily, you know, everything kind of stayed in the right place and whatnot. It's still, you know, the music still carved through. Um, and I think it's really just about what's being expressed and what's being discussed. I mean, you're talking about, you know, a mother-son relationship. It's going to be very different than, you know, the need to find food and, you know,
Mhm.
the long arduous journey or the threats that, you know, they're having to endure. I mean, and there's a lot of amazing slow motion shots. And one thing that we did bring up was like when it's in slow mo, it's not meant to be, you know, pummeling along. Like enjoy the visual and let the music kind of, you know, suck you into that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, a lot of that was discussed the entire way through. Lots of back and forth.
Absolutely. And so how much did the, I guess, the, you know, each episode is probably taking us to, you know, we're taking to a different location, different animal. So how much did the location influence the instrumentation? Like how much, what kind of made you choose certain instruments or certain sounds? Were you embracing certain cultures and certain styles? And I'm curious what was, how did you know not to be too on the nose or too much, and kind of still kind of give you that character warmth and not kind of overbear, you know, I guess the people with just like style and aesthetic and all that stuff, you know?
I tried to do something not only for each character, but also for each episode in general. That yes, like you said, like it, you know, it kind of gravitates towards that area. So
Yeah.
for one episode called Ocean Odysseys, which is the first episode they started out with when we were working. The humpback whales begin their migration from Hawaii and go up to Alaska to feed, and the whales play a very significant role in traditional Hawaiian culture. So I'd actually reached out to a vocalist down there who's a native Hawaiian, and her name is Pua. Wonderful, wonderful person to work with. I had found some general like traditional prayer stuff online. I had written a melody, and then I kind of engaged her to be like, "Hey, what can we do with this, or what would work
Yeah.
here?" And so she helped create, like, you know, adding the lyrics from this prayer to the melody that I had written, and that's the theme for the humpback whales. And so, you know, being able to kind of embrace something like that for each episode, I think was really special. Another episode that takes place in Africa, I worked with a flautist, Gina Luciani. She had something called a fula, which is native to West Africa. Use that for the flamingos. We've got let's see. Oh, there's an episode all about air. It's following the monarch butterfly and the African swallow. And so my original goal for that was like no strings and like, you know, all wind ensemble kind of thing, which, you know, that was going to be a little too traditional, but, you know, finding some really cool things, you know, with clarinets and trombones and things like that, that they weren't sounding traditional, but making little pulses that, you know, and breath inspired things, and, you know, finding different way to give pace. So I tried to take something from each of the general feel and the
Yeah.
visuals that we'd see, and you know, try to showcase it somehow in the music.
And I think it's, I mean, I love that you did that, because it's, to me, that's such a beautiful, like weird kind of, like we are humans telling the stories of our natural world, and these instruments and sounds don't mean a damn thing to these animals, but it's like, it's the culture of our humanity that over our, you know, generations of, you know, thousands of years of humans, like creating this culture for ourselves. And that's how we relate to the world and how we connect to out the natural world that we see. And I think it's such a beautiful kind of like, marriage there. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think the one thing that they really gravitated towards, just speaking of just like complete humanity and nature, is like voices was their biggest thing across
Yeah.
the entire series. So there's a lot of choral stuff in there. We weren't able to replace everything, but it's neat to be able to work with that in a very different way also. So that was a great tool throughout the course of the
Yeah.
series.
Were there any specific sequences or scenes throughout the episodes that kind of maybe like were either very creatively rewarding for you to kind of to execute, or maybe something that was really a challenge that kind of took maybe a hard nut to crack that took several attempts to finally kind of get it right?
um yeah, there when the scenes came around that that were very emotional, and they did throw temp in, and it was Thomas Newman from Finding Dory, or it's like, damn it. you're setting it up here,
Tommy.
like, I know. Like, you do this to me. So that definitely, it took a few times to get that, but everybody wound up very, very happy at the end of the day. And I think those tend to be some of the more rewarding ones, because you really you get into the emotion of it, and everybody really gets to feel it. So I don't know. I mean, I think going through the project, I think all of it's rewarding. I don't think I didn't necessarily like throw away a cue just because nothing was happening visually, or like it was a subdued moment. Like there was always a reason for what was happening musically.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And I'm sure, scoring a nature documentary, because you are doing heartwarming, like, tender moments. You are doing kind of more intense kind of survival moments. You're all doing kind of these big, migration things. So you're kind of going through different genres as well, genres of storytelling. So you're probably getting to flex like different sides of your storytelling muscles to, like, you can do something more pulse pounding action, maybe something more simple. Do you kind of sense that you had to kind of go through like different genres and to kind of keep the episodes going?
I was never bored on this show.
Yeah.
Not once. No, it was great to be able to do anything. There's so many different things, like you said. So if I was feeling like I was just banging my head against the wall with one thing, I had plenty of other episodes and characters and scenes to be able to divert to, and
Yeah.
sit in there for a little while, and then be able to come back to it with a fresh mind. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's nice to be able to have the wider palette and experimentation stuff along the
Yeah,
way.
well, I mean, congratulations on the score and on the series. It's beautiful, and it's such an amazing. It's the Jake Monaco score for sure. So it's got.
Thanks, man.
Well, I mean, yeah. So outside of nature documentaries, you've done so many, awesome projects, and we could be sitting here, for hours talking through your whole filmography. But I'm curious. Like, I really enjoyed Cars on the Road, the miniseries that you did for Disney Plus as well, and you got to again jump into a different Newman's world, but like, so I'm curious what it's like to approach. I guess we have these established characters. You get to create kind of a little world of your own. I talked to Dom, who did Monsters, Monsters at Work, which was kind of similar thing where you take a established franchise and kind of get to do your own thing. So I'm curious what it was like for you to work on Cars on the Road and kind of dive into that world.
Talking about doing different genres all within the same project, Cars definitely took the cake for that. With 9 episodes, every single one of them was a completely different genre.
Wow.
Which was amazingly fun. 3 directors, 2 editors, producers. I mean, every Zoom call was a collage of people, and everyone was just so excited about what they were doing and had so much great input, and like everybody was doing it for a reason. It there wasn't we didn't want to use themes necessarily from the movies, so it was
Right.
kind of a standalone thing from that,
Right.
which
Yeah.
was great. The one thing that we did kind of keep cohesive was there was we called it the Cars World sound, which is basically just a little bit of an intro and sometimes a bit of an outro to the episode, just to kind of get us in. Okay, where are we going to go with this one? And then within 30 seconds, you're into, whether it's the Dino Park episode, and you're with some more classic orchestral type sounds, or you're on the hunt for the legend of Bigfoot, and it's an all synth score, 80s
Yeah.
Stranger Things, but a little bit more contemporary. or this like Mad Max inspired world of road rumblers. I mean, there's so many really, really cool and fun genres to explore. Intense bluegrass, like movie set, classic movie set kind of feel. It was a lot
Yeah.
of fun. And
Abs-
then there's the Trucks episode, which was, the song in and of itself. And
right.
that
Yeah.
was a beast. That was amazing to work on as well.
And when you're working on like on a CG show like that, because you've worked a lot in kind of children's TV and animation, compared to maybe something like Scooby Doo, and something to Cars where it's CG versus maybe 2D. Does that change when you come in to start working? Like, are you working earlier on Cars because it takes maybe a little bit longer versus Scooby Doo? I mean, they're both a very long process, but I'm curious if it differs at all.
Scooby Doo, because that show was more in a regular pattern. It was every 2 weeks we were doing an episode. Cars was
Yeah.
not like that at all. It was essentially, I think they broke it up into 2 batches. It was,
Mm.
5 and then 4, I think. But we were working on all those episodes, continuously. And we were on them for months at a time. So it was a long process to go through this. So there was a lot of shots that were, nothing was lit when I started. Some were still in, just like animatic form.
Yeah.
But I mean, all the intentions are there, and there's some cool opportunities to be had too through discussion that get to shape what the eventual outcome is. There's
Yeah.
one scene I think it's the second episode, Lights Out, where this giant hearse comes up and he's going to chase McQueen in this haunted mansion, which is kind of a nod to Disney's Haunted Mansion.
Right.
But the director of that episode, Steve Purcell, he did a bunch of like vocalizations that was like ba 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 ba, brrr, like all this like random stuff, and he was showing it to me, and it's like, okay, and I want it to kind of be like, I don't know. He gave me an example. I forget what it was off the top of my head, but I was like, okay, can you send me all your vocalizations? Because if he's going to be saying all these things, and we need the pace and everything for the chase, send me that. Like, let's build it into what this thing is. So now it's like what's the chicken thing?
Oh,
I can't think of it now. We'll put it in the comments below when I think of it. But it turned out to be so funny, and all of us were just laughing during the entire process of putting this thing together, because it was just a bunch of ridiculous vocalizations that ended up in this fun piece called Wraith Rock.
Sounds like you went like a full like John Powell experience. I was like going crazy vocals and stuff.
Oh my God, you gotta have fun with that stuff.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it must have, yeah, I can't imagine. And then another film you did, which I really enjoyed, was Jerry and Marge Go Large, and you got to work with director David Frankel. So I mean, that was must have been so much fun, and also kind of doing. And I'm curious what the approach was that to make sure that the tone was right and that the music wasn't kind of doing too much, and make sure he left space for like the actors to work. So I'm curious how you approached that score.
David was great to work with. The producer on that film, Gil Netter, was also wonderful, and we had a great little team that was, we just discussed it's really about, this older couple that have, ventured into their retirement years, and what are they going to do? And the main character that Cranston plays is a bit of a savant, and it's just kind of a fun little journey that they go on. It needed to be taken lightly. Like, there just needed to be fun
Right.
within the score.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, we have their serious moments, but when I did some original specs for that, and just a couple of like theme demos and whatnot, and tried to figure out what could sound, like we have the lottery balls dropping. And so, like there's this one little staccato rhythm that is all throughout the entire film. And it's a very simple little thing, but I kind of milked it for all that it was worth in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And, like there's lots of montages where the balls are falling, they're counting lottery tickets and whatnot. And there's a lot of fun to be able to, explore and have fun with that stuff. And
Yeah.
they were really, really supportive of a lot of that. So it was a really fun experience to be able to experiment a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, like, so I mean, you've worked on so many different genres and different styles, and worked with all these different filmmakers, and I'm curious, like, how often do you I feel like in our business, we always kind of just, we're on to the next, we're on to the next, we're on to the next. Do you ever take time to pause and kind of look back at everything that you've done? And do you ever go back and revisit scores and take a like, or do you just not, do you not like listen to your stuff? Is it like hearing your voice or seeing your own picture? You're like, I don't want to see it or something like that. I'm curious.
No, I think by the end of a project, like I want to love what it is that's in there. And so I often will, go back to other things, or, if I'm working on another project, it's like, oh, I love the way that I did something here. I need to remind myself, oh, that's right. Now, how can I go further with that? Or maybe it was
Yeah,
just like this little nugget of an idea that I really liked in one thing, and now I can turn it into something much, much greater in another project or something. Just conceptually. But no, I do. I like going back to the
yeah,
stuff. I mean, it's fun. Especially now after doing a very long stretch of Jerry and Marge, Cars on the Road, and then immediately into Incredible Animal Journeys, which was 14 months. It was about
that's a long time.
almost 2.5 years. So being able to now kind of pause and look back at all that and just really enjoy it, and also enjoy a little bit of space and kind of like rejuvenating
Yeah,
energy, and being able to I mean, the strike kind of helped in that a little bit, and now
sure.
being able to kick off 24 again will be good, but
Yeah, I think so.
it'll be nice to
Yeah,
reflect.
it'd be nice to, yeah, it was a nice pause of reflection, you did mention the strike. The industry is changing. We're kind of in this moment. I feel like we're seeing all for I think for the good. I think the strike was so important and everything that they
Yeah.
fought for, and I'm so happy that they got the deals that they deserved. And but for younger people coming in, I guess people like I met somebody at an SEO event. They're like, oh yeah, I just moved to LA last week. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I can't even imagine like
Like, good luck.
like I mean, I came out here in 2010. I'm just like, I moved out with friends, and we're like, how the hell are we going to survive out here? And I'm just like, I mean, I guess every generation has their own like challenges and stuff, but I'm curious, what tips or advice would you give to people coming into this world, whether it's through composing or just in the industry? It's like, what have you seen that's like, I guess to inspire people to, like that things should hopefully get better?
Honestly, I mean, this is a really good time, because when COVID hit, everything blew up with streaming.
Yeah,
So many shows, so many more shows were being made now and over the last few years than ever were before. So there's so many more opportunities for young and up and coming composers, and being able to kind of jump at those. So I think it's meeting people, getting the real world experience. Don't be afraid to ghostwrite for people. Like,
yeah,
get that experience, get notes from different people, ghostwrite from many people, because you're going to learn what to do, what you like doing, what you hate doing,
mm,
developing like what
yeah,
your methods are and what you enjoy doing. Because if you don't enjoy doing it, then you're in the wrong business.
yeah,
So I
absolutely.
just keep writing, work with different people, not only meet, but like be able to go back and forth. It's good.
Yeah. And I did want to also ask, because you did mention how you had kind of a break now, they kind of reset, and you mentioned you're going from project to project to project. Like, how do you fight, I guess, burnout? I'm curious, like as a composer, I think all of us are, we always try to take on more than we probably should, and then you get in this like I'm going through it right now because I'm back at work, back here in
Mm.
LA, and my animation industry is going through so much, and Cartoon Network Studios merging with Warner Brothers Animation and all these different things, and it's like, yeah, it's been a lot. So I'm curious, like, how do you juggle it, and how do you kind of, do you have any practices or tips where you kind of be like, okay, we need to like, I need a brain refresher? Do you go for a run? Do you go, like, I'm curious how you kind of manage manage everything?
No, the whole workout thing I think is good, because you need to like
Yeah,
relieve some sort of stress. So whether it's run or gym, something like that is always very healthy. Um, I try to do something that is completely different, but might still be tied into the world that I'm in. Like, it's been really fun to, with the whole Nat Geo thing. They asked me to do a bunch of like TikTok-esque like little videos that then I've handed to them, and then they've been like recutting them in with other footage and things like that. So being able to kind of dive into something totally different, like, whether it's the social media production or other types of like filmmaking type things, like I've been doing stuff with my kid. But it's still like
or like the
in,
Scooby video you made with Matt
yeah,
for
exactly. Just
Film
like,
Music Media. Like, cue it right now. I'm gonna put it right here. Go watch that video.
it's kind of like, it's just like the silly things that because
Yeah.
you need to have fun with some of this stuff, and it becomes tense, especially towards the end of a project or whatnot. So finding something that you can find a little bit of relief in, I think is smart, and you know just
Yeah.
doing different stuff. It's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jake, thank you so much for chatting this evening and for bringing me into your world. And it was so great to catch up and learn all about your approach and some of your projects. And yeah, it was such a blast. I've been such a huge fan of yours, and I'm just always excited to see what you have coming up next.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.